All right, here we go. Legal podcast back on a Wednesday night as Judge Dan is here as our legal insider, and kind of a good night to do this. Kind of a good week. It's been pretty crazy with the news cycle. Before we get into anything with the Brian Flores case, how was Project Dog the last week or so?
I will say this though, my thing saying broadcast not available on the old Twitter machine here. So
damn it!
Just so you know.
Oh well, Twitter, go after yourself.
Well, interesting. So we went to Chicago to get and the dog was outside of Chicago. But Cofield, have you spent a lot of time in Chicago?
I've been there a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I have never been to Chicago before, or at least not. I mean, maybe I was born in Illinois, so maybe when I was a baby, I'd been there. Interesting town. I'd never been on a subway before. Steve, I know you've been on a subway plenty of times. Probably an 80-year-old woman within 90 seconds of me being down into the subway, trying to be hustled by a 80-year-old woman trying to hustle me out of money and stuff. Filthy, disgusting. I got on the subway for one ride, got off at the next stop, walked back. The aroma in Chicago, not so pleasant. The food, really kind of a mixed reviews on the food. I was walking around. I get up early and I do walks for exercise. I was like, I don't know if you could pay me enough to live here. To be honest with you, I just don't know. That I don't think there's there. I mean, I'm sure there is a number. Maybe if I made Cofield money, maybe you could convince me. But I just don't think there's a number you could pay me within reason to make me live in Chicago.
That bad, huh?
Oh,
seems
yeah.
Seems a little overboard.
Yeah. Oh, you live in a nice warm weather. It's cold.
No, that part. Yeah. No, there's no argument. There's no discussing that. I mean, Chicago is horrific for weather.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm talking about. Like the whole thing. I mean, it literally. I had a ski mask on, an weather insulated ski mask on, and the stench of I don't know what it is of Chicago still coming through. Walking around town. I don't know, man.
What was the food you got that was so bad?
Well, one of the pizzas, Giordano's, was really good. The other one we had Lou Malnati's delivered to the room. Not fantastic. One of the Polish dogs at one of the famous places was. I mean, it tastes okay. It was a mess though. It was a disaster trying to eat it. And then another one of the hot dog things was absolutely disgusting. Kind of smelled like just threw it away. It was like sewage. So no, I mean,
so picky. So
picky. Cofield saying to me, I'm picky. Are you kidding me? No.
Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked for a second on
the technical.
No, on a discussion on Twitter. It's like I don't even know how I respond.
To the trolls.
Well, it's not. I don't even know who it's. Well, first of all, it's another one of the 85 million people who doesn't put their fucking picture up or a real name, so I don't know why I bother. But Arash Markazi out of LA, is kind of fancies himself a big venue guy, an event guy, and he does a good job. LA and Vegas. He was saying that the get-in price for the NHL All-Star Game and the Pro Bowl this weekend is pretty cheap. And he said it was $115 to get into the All-Star Game and $85 to get, or $80 to get into the Pro Bowl. And I was like, I actually think $80 is kind of high in a 65,000 seat stadium. And
right.
So then someone, it's my fault because I commented on someone's comment, but someone was like, no one cares about the Pro Bowl. And I'm like, actually, the Pro Bowl generally gets 4 times the ratings of the NHL All-Star Game. And if the audience is between 7 and 10 million, people care about the Pro Bowl. Like, I don't care. I'm not watching it. But I've always talked about this, like sports radio people, media people in general, and snarks on Twitter are not good sources on what the average sports fan watches. Football is football to people. And even the Pro Bowl, people are like, yeah, I'll just have it on in the background. Just the football game is on TV, so I'm going to watch it. So it's like, if 8 million people or 9 million or 10 million people watch it, then people care. Someone cares.
I would say, and the pool of hockey fans is very limited. Although I would say the ticket price for an NHL All-Star game would be significantly higher than a ticket for a Pro Bowl event. That I would agree with, but because an NHL All-Star game should be a much more valuable, even though there's a limited fan base, a much more valuable event for the NHL than the Pro Bowl. I mean, they've talked about canceling the Pro Bowl before, even though football. Here's how. If we're going to get this sidetracked, here's how football goes. I hosted basically the night show on the Fan 2 months over the summer. That is typically our worst rated time. The spot I was hosting, the reason that slot is that's also for that slot is lowly rated. It's going up against the Rockies. They're on every night. Some other events are going on, and it's a low spot supposedly for football. And that show I'm supposed to be doing post game and stuff like that. I did none of that. I almost never talked about the Rockies.
Right.
I did my straight football show the same I do on the weekends. I doubled the ratings. Period.
Right.
For 2 straight months, and they were basically the best ratings that show got all year long. You want to know why? Because I talk football, and I could care less about the damn Rockies that suck, and even the Nugs and Avs are on a little bit or whatever. I didn't do any of that. I mean, little tiny bits, because everybody talks football. Everybody cares about football.
Yep.
Little pockets of people care about baseball. Avs, Nuggets, whatever. I'm sure it's the same in most cities. It's crazy.
I mean, we're still doing pretty well with hockey interest, but I mean, next time we talk to Adam Hill on here, the RJ has dropped all road coverage of anything UNLV related, and I don't know if they're traveling a VGK group anymore. So I don't think they're going to Golden Knights games. So
really, on the road?
Yeah.
Well, that's tough because I mean, newspapers die. It's tough. Newspapers. They're dying. They're dying.
But in comparison, the Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler press conference the other day, they had 7 people there.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
and they often travel 5 to the Raiders games on the road.
Now, why do they need 5 people at a Raiders game? Seriously, legitimately, why do you need 5 staff members at a Raiders game? For
multiple
columnists,
couple of writers, videographer. Let's do it.
Why do you need multiple columnists at a Raiders game?
Because a columnist can only write one story.
Right. I mean, and what story does he have to be in the locker room to write? I mean, I don't understand.
Hey, I'm not here to defend it. I'm just telling you that they get the numbers that justifies it. Their numbers are so boffo for the Raiders that it just blows away everything else in the market.
What numbers? For a newspaper, what numbers?
Oh, their traffic online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're like that paper's like a very highly trafficked.
They sell it?
National website.
They monetize it?
I think so, dude. I don't know all their business, and I'm probably not at liberty to talk about more than I just talked about. So
why not?
Because I don't work there. It's not.
What are you here for? Aren't you? You're here to tell the people. You're the voice of the people, Cofield. If that's not what you're here for, what are you doing it for? This is what we want.
I know. The pressure's on. So wait, I cut you off on Chicago. I will say on Chicago, I don't know that I had terrible food there. That's why I was saying you were being picky, but I agree. Well, I mean, first of all, how do you F up a hot dog? That's a tough one. And
it was gross. It was nasty.
And the deep dish pizza is just, I can have one of those like every 3 years.
And I like them in general.
I've had my fill. We have a couple of the chain places from Chicago here, and a local Chicago place here, and whatever. It's okay.
No, I actually, I was getting in a fight with Marilat right before I went, and he's like, it's a casserole. It's terrible. It's not pizza. It's a casserole. If you need a fork, it's not pizza. Fine. It's a delicious casserole, whatever. I normally love deep dish. And like I said, one of them was fantastic. The other one, I don't know. Maybe it was because it was delivery. It was, maybe I picked the wrong toppings. It wasn't terrible. It was just not, I think I got a bad pie.
Okay. We're seeing some stories come out because there's like 12 layers and directions we can go in with the Brian Flores deal. So apparently in, I don't know, the last hour or so, I guess Stephen Ross has now released a statement and said, with regards to the allegations made by Brian Flores, I'm a man of honor and integrity and cannot let them stand without responding. I take great personal exception to these malicious attacks, and the truth, if I can read, must be known. His allegations are false, malicious, and defamatory. I love that word. Justin Watkins was on today, and I said, hey, did Flores say anything that could bring suit back his way? So is the allegation by Flores that the owner was offering him payment to lose games? Is that the most serious thing out of all of this?
Okay, well, it could be
I'm
the
talking
most
serious, like someone else could step in. Like this ain't just
right.
the NFL that's going to look at this. I mean, Justin talked about it. I saw Amy Dash, who's a legal insider, talked about game fixing. All of a sudden, we're talking about the feds potentially getting involved.
Yeah, I saw Florio talking about it, and I did listen. I went back and listened to your conversation with Watkins. I highly doubt any of that's going to happen because, and Watkins touched on this. Now, if they were just flat out fixing games, yes, that would be an issue. And if they were, particularly fixing games to gain a monetary gain, so that they can rush to the book and clear money, well, that would be a slam dunk. But Stephen Ross is a participant in the system. Typically, historically, participants have legal exceptions. For example, if you run up full speed, if I run up to Cofield as fast as I can and lay a shoulder into his chin and lay him out, that's assault. That's a crime. I'm going to jail for it. And early on, back in the 60s, I believe it was, one player tried to sue another player, and courts have said, no, there's an exception for participants, for combatants, whatever, in the sporting world. It's now, as long as you're doing it within certain confines, Stephen Ross has a right to run his team in whatever competitive manner he chooses to do. It looks, I mean, now it looks greasy and terrible to say I'm going to incentivize you. But he's his coach. He can compensate his coach. It's not bribery, right? I can give you a bonus to win games. Dana White gives knockout bonuses to knock out other fighters. So I know other people are saying, oh, it's bribery. I don't think. I think it's highly unlikely you think it's going to come out of that. Now, one thing I'm surprised Justin didn't bring up that I've been talking about, because you actually asked the question, Steve, on the show today. You said, do they have to investigate this? Do the lawyers, when Flores says something, do they have to ask? Do they just put it in there? There was one.
My question was, when you're an attorney, do you have a certain responsibility when you're putting that into a suit to protect the person levying the allegations and go, hey, be careful here. Like, do you have proof that he offered you $100,000? What do we have if they want to move forward with this?
Okay, so the answer is yes. Attorneys have an ethical responsibility to at least make some reasonable inquiry to all the things that they're putting in the four corners of the documents they're submitting to the court. Now, we've seen this in a couple areas that I'll explain. For example, the judges started hammering in the election lawsuits where people were coming forward and saying, I know that the election was fixed. And the lawyers were just saying, okay, we're taking your affidavits and we're filing lawsuits. And the judges were saying, you have no proof of this. And you, as the attorneys, have a responsibility before filing these legal pleadings. Under the rules of federal rules of civil procedure, you have a responsibility to make sure to do at least a reasonable investigation as to the truth of what you're putting in these pleadings and submitting to the court. If the lawyer doesn't do that, he's in trouble. Now, I can tell you, Steve, and there's also some ethical rules about not misleading and things like that. And I can tell you how I've used it. I just recently had a case where there was an attorney on the other side. Normally, when you're dealing with, in certain cases, the other side's not represented. It's called pro se. Sometimes you're actually glad when they get a lawyer because it's more reasonable. In this instance, when the lawyer came on, just all sorts of dirty misrepresentations, lying, and she started making like accusing me of harassment and all this stuff, harassing other, and I got sick of it. And so I hit her with ethical violations. And part of it was she put false statements in her pleadings. And I said, I don't even care if her client told her this. She has a duty as a lawyer to at least investigate what her client tells her to a reasonable extent. If not, she as the lawyer can be sanctioned. Why am I saying all this? Because the Broncos, right, are very clearly saying there is one element. Now, some of this is like, well, it's he said, she said. Not when Mr. Flores is saying they showed up an hour late, or at least some of the 5 members of the Broncos staff showed up an hour late to the interview. The Broncos are saying that's a complete falsehood. Period. All 4 of us came on the same plane from a previous interview in California. We all landed at 2:30 a.m. So we weren't out drinking all night. Now, could have, some of them been drinking on their private jet? Oh, that's a possibility. But we weren't out at a bar all night. And Joe Ellis was dealing with a personal matter in the New England area. So he wasn't out, gallivanting. And they claim that they were at the meeting room at the scheduled time, the time scheduled by the Patriots, by Bill Belichick and the Patriots at 7:30 a.m. They were there on time, all 5 of them. So if Mr. Flores, through his attorneys, filed a pleading, said they showed up an hour late, or at least some of them showed up an hour late, and none of them were late, those lawyers can be hit with sanctions. And that doesn't have to go to trial. They can just simply, the NFL can file motions saying we want sanctions and we want a hearing on the matter. And if Flores starts losing things early on, motions like that, if the NFL can start disproving some of his allegations right off the bat, that will be troublesome for him.
It's kind of part of the legal thing. I've seen some people say that he should have filed this after he got shut out completely around the National Football League for a head coaching gig. Did he need to wait?
Well, first off,
to build his case, would his case be even stronger? There could be there's not going to be a 10th opening now because Jim Harbaugh's not leaving. But 9 openings, Flores doesn't get hired, 0 for 9. Does that actually help him a little more if he had waited another 10 days?
Well, it would help more, but part of what Justin was talking about on your show earlier is some of this stuff does cut both ways. It cuts against him. He got hired after the Broncos incident, right? And basically, nothing he alleged, he kept that job for 3 years, and nothing he alleged. I don't know if I read the lawsuit. He tried to make some nexus between, okay, what happened to Miami. Nothing of it had to do with race. It had to do with basically insubordination. They asked me to be, not competitive. My integrity said I couldn't do that. And in the lawsuit, most people don't know this, they tried to say, well, then the Broncos cast me as an angry black man. Cofield, you're a professional. Your job is to talk sports. Have you ever heard that Brian Flores was an angry black man?
No.
Okay.
I saw a reporter when he got fired. I saw a local reporter in Miami, say he's a dick, and that all Belichick. Most of the Belichick tree members are dicks, and they get it from Belichick. So, I never saw he was, angry.
Right. So that's what the pleadings allege, is that the Dolphins started circulating out into the public sphere, essentially, that, okay, because he didn't tank, then from that point on, they tried to paint him in this light that he's the, quote, stereotypical angry black man. Not that he's a Belichick disciple and difficult, he's an angry black man. Essentially, so let's just do this. Let's go over the 3, as to Flores, the 3 allegations he has to show that he's been discriminated against, right? The Dolphins thing. They wanted me to tank. I wouldn't do it. And then so he's trying to go in this roundabout way, create some sort of nexus. They asked me to tank, therefore I was discriminated against. I don't see it. I honestly do not see it. Not on that front. Now, is it maybe something else? Maybe could Stephen Ross lose his team because it's a bad look? I doubt it. I doubt anything is going to come of it, really. I mean, they'll do an investigation. Maybe he gets censured. I don't know. Is there going to be a bombshell out of that? No, I don't think so. Now on to the Broncos. He claims that they showed up, some of them, 2, 3 members of those, including the GM and the president of the team, out of the 5 members of their group, several of them, including Joe Ellis, John Elway, and at least one other, showed up an hour late to the interview, disheveled, and they seem to be hungover. Okay. Broncos flatly deny it, and they say, well, we're going to have notes and disprove all of that. Now, based on our, I work for the Fan in Denver, based on our investigation behind the scenes, the Broncos are saying this is simply just not true, period. There's nothing to it. We're shocked by it. It just didn't happen. Even if, maybe John Elway, and just now not commenting on what they're saying, but let's just say, okay, John Elway knows, he likes his cocktails, whatever. Even if he wasn't 100% engaged in the interview, I don't know that means he's discriminated against. By the way, the Rooney Rule, doesn't mean none of this means he didn't get hired because he's black. All it means is maybe he only got interviewed because he's black. So that's difficult. But then the very next year he got a job. So now let's go to the Giants situation, which is, okay, somebody who doesn't work for the Giants says, hey, I heard you got the job. And he goes and does the interview anyway. And the Giants, the problem with his claim there is, so they're just saying, oh, that's a slam dunk. That's a smoking gun. Well, it may have been a sham interview, but here's what the Giants are going to say. This was not just a sham interview to satisfy the Rooney Rule. If all we were doing was trying to satisfy the Rooney Rule, well, why did we interview a third minority candidate who didn't qualify for the Rooney Rule? Because he was an internal candidate, our defensive coordinator. If we're just a bunch of racists that want to be or only doing token interviews to satisfy the Rooney Rule, why are we doing that? Oh, and by the way, if he wasn't a legitimate candidate at all, why was our owner involved talking to him outside of the interview? And why did our GM bother to take him out to dinner? If all it was a token interview, why didn't we just bring him in for his 3 hours and let him go? Why didn't we do that? And if all we were doing throughout this process was token interviews, why do we bother doing a first Zoom interview with Leslie Frazier and then bring him in for an in-person interview when all we had to do was one in-person interview with him? And by the way, why did we interview the third guy, the 2 other white guys, when all we wanted was Brian Dable to begin with? They had a very complete process that wasn't just centered around the Rooney Rule. And so to make the argument that, oh, some guy outside of the organization heard some gossip that, oh, they only had one candidate and it was going to be him no matter what, I don't think that flies. So when I read the pleading, just so right off the bat, I said, wait a minute, this doesn't look like a normal lawsuit, especially in a federal setting. The way it was formatted, I said, I don't do a ton of these, but this doesn't look right to me. And then what I did was I asked a friend of mine, actually, she's in Las Vegas, but I sent her the thing. I said, you want to take a look at this and let me know what you think? Her exact words were, I can tell you by looking at page 1 that this is a publicity stunt. This was filed purely for media attention. It's pure showmanship. I would be embarrassed to submit a federal pleading like this to a federal court. And as I went through that whole complaint, that 58-page complaint, I just thought it was grandstanding. It was so thin on actual evidence. It was like a history lesson in, bad behavior by the NFL. But when it came to specific evidence of discrimination related to Brian Flores and likely members of this class, I'm like, I don't see it. So Now we can talk about what may happen as a result of just the fact a lawsuit is filed, because that's what Justin and I always argue over when we have our podcasts. We can talk about that, but Flores having some smoking gun where he's got them by the what. So far, I don't see it.
What about this one from Brady about Belichick being forced to give out more information?
Yeah, he could be compelled. Well, he will be compelled. He'll be as evasive as he possibly can. I mean, that would be interesting. But yeah, I mean that's always so. But here's what's going to happen first. Now, I heard Justin say he didn't think that it was very likely that the NFL could get granted a motion to dismiss. I think the NFL has a better shot at it than probably Watkins does. Um, One, because I don't. What people aren't understanding is they filed this as a class action, with 40 other possible, because they filed it on behalf of every former, within the statute of limitations, every former black head coach, offensive coordinator, and I think quarterback's coach, and everyone that's ever interviewed for one of those positions and GM positions. Well, now Hugh Jackson did pop up today, and because he's basically out of the league and I don't think he's getting back in, and he's coaching at a historically black college now, I wouldn't be surprised, yeah, if maybe he jumped into the lawsuit. But if they don't actually have a shot at getting any other class members to jump on, I don't know how that works, but I don't know if this lawsuit survives that. Um, and there were certain elements of relief that the court simply can't grant. So I could see them dismissing a large part of this lawsuit, saying you're seeking relief we have no ability to grant. So all that is dismissed. We might be able to move forward, on a damages portion only. But I think that part of it was just for show anyway. So again, but the way these work is the defense always goes for a motion to dismiss first. And if they don't get that, then things start getting more serious.
Right.
NFL has a shot at dismissal. After that, then the discovery process goes. However, in this case, it's not as bad as like the St. Louis thing where all the owners' financials and this and that necessarily are going to be, pertinent. Certain embarrassing things will be absolutely disclosed. That's what the NFL owners always want to protect, right? They want to protect their sensitive private information. That's why there's always leverage to get a deal done here. And so that's why I think ultimately, before it gets too embarrassing for the owners, yes, Brian Flores will get something out of this. I just don't know what he's looking for. Cofield, this makes no sense. Why did he do this now? Why did he risk? He was going to get another job. I think he got some.
Not this year, but down the road.
Right. I mean, but yeah, maybe not this year. Maybe not. I don't know. Do you know that the Saints weren't going to hire him?
No. I'm going by the odds. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Jacksonville's a mess. I don't know what they're doing. We still don't know what Houston's doing, right? Who's Houston hiring?
Josh McCown. I think they're just waiting for things to cool down.
Okay.
Because that'll be a good look. That'll be a great look when you've had diversity issues at a head coaching spot and they bring in a guy who has never been a coach.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So, but here's the thing I brought up. Here's why I can understand his frustration. But this is the way football works. Take the Broncos for an example. They just had two straight head coaches. One was absolutely not. He did happen to be black, but he was supremely unqualified to be a head coach at all because he had no credentials, right? And Vance Joseph didn't work out. They had to fire him after 2 years. Then they brought in Vic Fangio, a complete disaster. Had no idea how to be a head coach. They had two coaches in a row now that have just run this franchise into the ground because they had no idea how to be a head coach. So okay, we need another coach now. They hired Nathaniel Hackett, who doesn't have much of a track record at all, except for he's really exciting. He's a real fun guy to watch at a press conference. He's the guy they hire. Brian Flores doesn't even get an interview, doesn't even get a sniff for that job. Cofield, you tell me, who's a better head coach, right now today, as we sit here, Brian Flores, who did what he did with the Dolphins without a quarterback, or Nathaniel Hackett, who essentially has no track record?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now Flores is more qualified than every single person who's been hired.
There you go. So if you're Brian Flores and you know that you're not getting jobs that you should be getting, and then I think this is what really got to Flores's hide is he understands that there have to be sham interviews for the Rooney Rule, but he's gotten to the level.
Yeah, it's like
Remember when
I don't need to be part of the sham.
exactly?
Hey
Yeah,
Texans, you wanna bring in Hines Ward, who is I think the wide receivers coach at Florida Atlantic. He got an interview. He actually
right.
did get an interview. You want to do that? It sucks, right? Probably disturbs me to see it, but I've graduated to the next level. So,
Right. And I think that's what really got to him. But by the way, reading these pleading, reading the lawsuit, they want to make it sound like, oh, he got the text from Belichick and then he called this lawyer and then they called CBS and then here we are. This was in motion. At least these lawyers, I don't know if the lawyers were just waiting for a client to come to them or if Flores had been lying in the weeds. This did not just happen once that text message came in. These this had been somebody had been waiting to file this for a while. Okay, they had the information on Gruden, they, they had information on a whole range of issues that they were just like waiting to hit send on. Like they didn't just throw this. They said on his lawyer said on CBS today, "Oh, we got the call right after that Belichick text message, and we got to work on the complaint." No, I'm not buying that at all.
Assistant commission asks, any chance the Saints could still hire Flores? Possibly. I mean, I was pushing on the air today. I think the organization that needs to do it to embrace Flores, and I think he'll do a good job in whatever capacity they want to bring him in, are the Raiders. And he's got the Patriot ties. Why not bring him in? Bring him in as an assistant
Well,
coach.
one,
I mean, I guess it's insulting, that he has to be an assistant coach, but you may as well make some money, and then not be on the outside looking in.
well, I don't know if you get along with McDaniels, but by the way,
I have no idea what their relationship was in New England. I mean, I would assume they had a decent relationship, but I would also assume that Nick Caserio, the Patriot guy in Houston, would have been like, "Yeah, Josh, we want you," but apparently he doesn't. So who knows?
not Josh, yeah, Brian. Well, the reason I think he would be a great candidate for the Saints is probably the reason he did such a great job with the Dolphins. They have no quarterback. They need somebody. Flores has a track record of at least getting to a certain level of success without great parts and pieces. And the Saints need that because the Saints are going to be a disaster for a while. So why wouldn't they want him? He has a track record.
So can we talk about the Patriots? And they do on the drinking front.
Or the Broncos.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep screwing things up. Broncos, on the Broncos, you're close to that. And there were some situations in the past where they did have some guys who like to throw them back and got in trouble publicly.
Okay, so Elway likes his cocktails. That's kind of, without defaming the guy, that's as far as anybody really wants to talk about. But he's John Elway. I mean, let's be honest. If you were John Elway, you'd want to enjoy life, wouldn't you? Now Matt Russell. But here's the thing that doesn't fit. Matt Russell. It's very public. He's the Broncos' assistant general manager, director of player operations, whatever he is. Was a great linebacker at the University of Colorado. I think he won the whatever the Buckus Award, whatever the top linebacker award is for college football. He's John Elway's right hand man. They've been screwing up drafts together in Denver for the last half decade plus, right? But he had a severe alcohol problem, and this is not that's allegedly because he admitted to it. It's public. He was in Breckenridge. He was at 3 times the legal limit. He was driving around. Somebody called it in. And the police responded. The police said, "Ooh, there he is. We need to do a U-turn and come get this guy." And they sat waiting for him, and he smashed into the cop pretty hard. He got banged up, got sentenced to 7 months in jail, which happens to be right next to the Broncos facility, literally. Like sometimes I walk out of court and walk next door and watch practice and stuff. in my suit, and he's on work release. So in work release, you spend the night in jail, and you're allowed to get up and work. So I'm sure he put on his nice suit and walked right next door to the Broncos facility. And then one day a week, the way it works in Arapahoe County where they are, one day a week, you have to spend the whole day in jail. You get a picket. I'm sure it wasn't Sundays because, you had to work that day. But so he's an executive in the league, and he's on work release. He didn't lose his job or anything like that. So but the point is, by the time this interview happened, now I don't know. All I know is he's claimed, I'm redeemed. Like I'm very proud of my sobriety. So if we believe that, he wasn't hungover because he doesn't drink anymore, is what he says. The other, Elway would be the only likely candidate out of any of the 4 that were on the plane that would have done that. But they landed at 2:30 in the morning, so they didn't go to a bar. They were on an airplane in the air, so private jet. Okay, I'm sure they had access to alcohol, but it's when he was asked this morning on ESPN, Flores said he was basically asked, "What proof do you have?" And he says, "I know truth. I speak in truth." Well, that's not going to cut it in court. When the Broncos say, have 5 people say, "I showed up at 7:30 a.m. I 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 showed up at 7:30 a.m. And they all have notes. Well, Elway probably didn't take notes, but the other 4 had notes. And there's a record, and it's only Flores saying, "Oh, well, my recollection was this person and this person showed up an hour late." And by the way, when he was asked by Greenberg today, well, what made you think they were hungover or drunk? He didn't say, well, they reeked of alcohol. He said, well, you can tell when a certain person, isn't in the right state. They didn't seem to be engaged. That was what he said. He didn't say, well, when somebody ties one on, they come in, they reek, and they're drooped over. He said they didn't seem engaged, or they didn't seem. Well, his words were they weren't in the right state. So, to answer your question, there would only really be one likely candidate out of that group of 5. Because Joe Ellis, the president, who was also basically who Flores insinuated, he was attending to a family matter. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention publicly what he was doing. He was already in New England. He had to get up and drive. He had to get up at like 6 a.m. and drive to the interview. So not likely. He definitely was not out bar hopping on it with the rest of them because he wasn't with the group. So there was only one member of the group, the contingent, that could have been, would have been likely at all. That's Elway. The rest of them would not have been likely to be, tying it on. So Flores, we don't know yet, unless he has some evidence. Flores his credibility could take a huge hit if they have a lot of evidence and he has none, and it turns out that it can be proven that the interviews started on time. His attorneys could be sanctioned, and he could have some real credibility issues when it comes time to start proving things.
James says, I think some people will argue that racism and collusion exist in the NFL, considering the historic prejudice of black quarterbacks in college and the NFL and coaching hires. Like I've heard a lot of people, get very, very passionate about this the last day and a half. And I mean, it's, like you just laid out logically, there might be some problems with Flores' argument, but the bigger picture here, the NFL still does have a problem, and it's had a problem over the years. And one of the things we talked about today is, in the end, is the Rooney Rule bad? I mean, would we just, if you didn't have the Rooney Rule, wouldn't we just find out which organizations do not give a shit about embracing any diversity? Like it's almost like owners and management are mad about the Rooney Rule, so they're making kind of a mockery of it.
Well, it used to be worse, right? And I think it used to be like some people have said, "Yeah, I got Rooney ruled," right? And that's actually the term that Flores used to categorize the Broncos interview. If you take a look, though, at the Giants interview process, I think it's very hard to say. And I do understand the the text message that Belichick sent. But I think it's, if you look at the body of evidence so far that we know as a whole from the Giants interview process, I think it's really hard to say that he got Rooney ruled. When you have the owner involved in the process, talking to candidates, a multitude of candidates, I think it's hard to say that Dable was the only candidate they were considering, period. I think he may have been a favorite. I think the new GM who had just recently got hired, yeah, he wanted to kind of bring in his guy. But man, I think it's hard, knowing the history of the Giants organization, knowing that, you know, that the owner is always kind of involved in the hires, knowing the lengths they went throughout the process for all these people. I think it's hard to say that you can just say that Flores was simply Rooney ruled. Right now, to go back to your question, just now this year, the rule is evolving. Now they've made it, you got to have in-person interviews, so you can't just get somebody on the line to make a token. You have to have 2 candidates now in person. You can't just have somebody in house, hey, go get such and such, our defensive coordinator, let's sit down with him like they used to, so we can say we satisfied the Rooney rule. These are all steps to say, we know we have, we know we're not perfect, we're trying to get better. But that's basically what this lawsuit is. It was like a laundry list. And by the way, Gruden, they took their hacks at Gruden, and the NFL said, they basically said, this guy's a pig, and he was a candidate for every job for 10 years, and the NFL didn't seem to care about that. But the Raiders didn't care about it. So the lawsuit's basically like, look at all this for forever. So therefore these people have been discriminated against. They don't get hired because they're black. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, you have to go to court and prove that. And so it's definitely one thing to say, hey, it's something we struggle with and we want to get better at. It's another thing to say, hey, I interviewed for a job, therefore I deserve $500 million as a result of me not getting hired because I'm black. That's 2 different things.
I wonder what everyone thinks of what unfolded the last 2 days with the Vikings. So yesterday we find out, or a couple of days ago, we find out that Harbaugh was going to interview today. Then it looks like, from at least one Michigan media report, that Harbaugh intended to take the job. I think that's how it was worded. This is at the same time that Patrick Graham, the DC from the Giants, is interviewing, supposedly for like 9 hours. Then today comes along, something changed. Harbaugh's going back to Michigan. All right, Patrick Graham, African-American, going to get the Vikings job. Now reports are out that Kevin O'Connell, another McVay guy, and he's been all over the league, he's not just a McVay guy, that it looks like Kevin O'Connell, the Rams OC, is going to get the job. So, okie dokie.
Right.
And I will just throw in the early reports on what happened with Harbaugh are that, and this is totally believable, are that Harbaugh went on the interview and presented an attitude like, I've got the job. Like, didn't really go with a good mindset to pitch himself. It's like, I'm the number 1 candidate. Yeah, I'll accept the job.
Well, it's like
I think he turned off the Vikings and he's like, oh, shit, yeah, Michigan, I'm coming back.
Well, part of this, though, is, I mean, he's such an odd dude. Part of this was his wanting to get even at Michigan because he had to take a pay cut, last year? And now he had a somewhat of a good year, but dude, I mean, they faltered down the stretch. I mean, they're acting like, like he went undefeated. It used to be a good season in Michigan was you won a national championship. And, he got blown out badly in a couple games this year, a couple big games, didn't he?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of mission accomplished. Like, he got near the mountaintop. Now the mission is, you're supposed to be here. You are supposed to be competing for a Final Four berth and maybe a national championship every year. There's no mission accomplished.
Right. And what was this? I mean, how did they do in the semifinal?
They got destroyed.
Yeah, and how did they do against Michigan State? And they got blown out 2 or 3 times this year.
Oh, Michigan State was a back and forth game.
Okay, well, but they had another blowout loss, didn't they? I think they got they had 3 losses.
Missing on this one?
Yeah, I think.
No, I don't think they did.
What was their record? Bring it up.
Yeah. Whatever. In the end, 12-2. So
I thought they lost 3 games.
my
Whatever.
my memory fades weeks
All
later.
right.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, a
With the
blowout loss in the bowl game didn't used to be a huge a huge successful season for Michigan, and but maybe that's me. I don't know.
I listen. We don't have all the details. I mostly believe that this is what happened to Harbaugh. That he went to the Vikings, and the Vikings were like, bro, we're like really doing an interview here. Like, you don't have the job. I
Yeah.
I do not believe, like, once McDaniels got hired by the Raiders, a lot of Raiders fans and bloggers were like, they didn't even talk to Harbaugh. I'm like, I guarantee they talked to him, or through intermediaries, and they got the same. You know what? I want full control, and it's my job. And I don't think Mark Davis, like, my guess is Mark Davis and the other people handling the search were like, or Mark Davis was told about it. It's like, yeah, the vibe on Harbaugh is not really what you want.
Right. Particularly with a guy that he is just so strange.
He's a bizarre dude.
He's bizarre. I remember he used to call into the Jim Rome show, and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you'd listen to his calls. He would
Yeah,
call into the smack off.
those bizarre pauses where you're like, what is Hadley? Yesterday, I kept saying that, and Adam Hill knows about Harbaugh, so he was kind of playing along, and he's a Michigan fan. But I kept saying, it's like, Mark Davis is a quirky guy, but so is Harbaugh, and it was like quirky v quirky, but they're different kinds of quirky. The reason Mark Davis is quirky is because he just comes off as so not an owner, right? He comes off as
Right. I'm not sure if it's you or me. You're kind of jamming up, but yeah, he comes off as an odd dude. He comes off as, quite frankly, as what he is, like the guy that just fell into owning an NFL team. Like nobody had ever heard of Mark Davis ever in his life, and then Al Davis dies, and here he is. Who's Mark Davis? He's the guy with the crazy haircut, and now he's owning the team. Now Brady says, "Is the smack off still a thing?" Man, I don't even know if Jim Rome is still a thing. I mean, I know he is. He's basically not on the air here in Denver, which is crazy because he used to get huge ratings. Every once in a while on cable, I see him. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with Jim with Jim Rome. But the weird thing about Harbaugh, though, is he was so super successful everywhere he went. You think he'd go to his alma mater and just blow it up. And he's been, if you look at his track record,
oh, there he is.
Yeah.
I was doing my own show.
Well, I was doing my own show too.
Yeah, I like it. Good job. We were both doing a solo show.
I don't know who was on the air.
I don't know what. I don't know. My internet, man. This Cox Communications locally. Come on.
That'd be interesting to see if my show was on the air or your show was on the air. That'll be funny.
Well, all right. In the final product, we'll see how it comes out. So there we are in Harbaugh. That's a friggin' mess.
Hey, it says I was on the air solo, so
there you go. It was
I'm
probably better.
putting in an extra talent fee for tonight.
If you were an agent and you were representing a head coach candidate, would you tell him to take the Miami Dolphins job, or nah, we might want to wait until we see who the owner is?
The Dolphins job?
The Dolphins job, yeah. What do you do?
No, I mean, I don't think it's likely that they're gonna. I mean, listen. I'm a Dolphins fan, so man, I would love nothing more than to see Stephen Ross booted and to get a real owner in there. Just like we are desperately hoping there's going to be a good owner finally in with the Broncos. By the way, this could be this. I tweeted out. I think Elway was still kind of clinging that he could get into the pile on.
Right. Yeah. You did say this could end it all for Elway.
That he could be, he wants to still be a part of the new ownership group. Like, so Elway and Peyton Manning are both, they're doing it differently this time. It's usually you attach yourself to an ownership group and hope they win. The Broncos are going into an auction. They're going on eBay, so to speak, right? And apparently the NFL's going to run the auction. And it's going to go to, they have their pool of candidates, and it's going to be in some sort of auction format, and it's going to the highest bidder. After that, Elway on his own and Peyton Manning on his own are then reportedly, well, Elway's said he wants to do it, Peyton Manning, I don't think has said he wants to yet, but they're on their own going to go to the high bidder and say, hey, can I kick in some money and be a part owner of the Denver Broncos? I think if anything is true to Elway was hungover, done, out. I think the league is already kind of not happy with Elway's shenanigans. I think they would frown on him. Ultimately, it would be up to the new owner, but he might just be done. What I've heard is the league already kind of has an owner they want, who's already a minority owner. They've vetted a minority owner on two fronts. He might be a minority owner as in a person of color, but he's also already a minority stakeholder in another NFL team, is what they would like to have, because they know he's already been part of the game. He's been vetted, he or she, and they're part of the family already. That's their candidate. They would like a minority candidate that has a ton of money, that's already got like Kroenke was a minority owner of the Rams and then became the majority owner. If they could have a somebody that has a stake in, I don't know, the Panthers, might be a person of color, and then boom, comes on, becomes the majority owner of the Denver Broncos. But that person has to become the highest bidder, so to speak. There goes Cofield again. I see you in the comments, Cofield. Welcome to the show. We go live to our comments section, and Steve Cofield joins us live from the comments. Reminds me of the time Adam Hill big timed us. He was trying to big time us on the podcast, and then we just were blasting him, and he was trying to then go in the comments, and then his ego took over. He's like, "That's it. Send me an invite," and he came on the show. So that's kind of what it is. But Cofield, same thing. These divas out there in Vegas. I was teasing Cofield one time. I said, "What are you going to have me? You have all these other guys on Cofield and Company, filling in as guest host. You should have me do it." He said, "Well, we can't afford you, Dan." And I said, "I'm not so sure about that." But I did say, I tweeted out yesterday, this could be the end for Elway as an owner whatsoever. To get back to Cofield's question, I think it's highly unlikely that a coach will turn down a job with the Dolphins. And here's the problem: there's multiple Cofields, multiple buffering Cofields right now in the broadcast.
So you got me now, right?
Sort of. Looks like you're on the run, like you're running through the streets of Las Vegas or something. It looks like you're on an iPhone. But yeah, we have you back. But so to answer your question, the reason people would take that job is the reason the guys always take the bad jobs. The reason why it always goes, or often goes, bad for minority candidates to begin with. It's John Embry, who was the head coach, who should be a candidate for jobs, by the way. He should be a candidate, not Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was his offensive coordinator at CU, but John Embry, who is a complete class guy and a great coach, was the head coach at CU, it was his alma mater. Eric Bieniemy was his offensive coordinator. They fired John Embry, but he thought they were on the cusp of doing something good at CU. And when he was, sometimes when coaches get fired, they actually go do their own press conference at the school because there's not enough bad blood, right? But he was very candid. He said, "Here's the problem with black coaches. We get the worst jobs. We don't get to take over." Like Josh McDaniels, for example. He's walking into a very good situation with the Raiders because John Gruden was not done with his rebuild, was in year 4 of the rebuild, right? Year 3 or 4. So he's going into a good situation. They have a decent quarterback. They've been building. Mayock and Gruden had been building. So he's taking over right now a playoff team. Embry's point was most oftentimes black coaches, minority coaches don't get the benefit. They get the worst jobs. Let's say Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph gets no authority, but he just takes it. He says, "Well, of course I'm taking it because it's one of 32 jobs. I may never have this opportunity again, so I'm taking the job." And he says last year Vance Joseph gave an interview and said, "In hindsight, I should have done that because I had no control. I had no authority. I was basically a figurehead. Yeah, I was allowed to coach on Sundays, but that was it. I didn't get to pick my players. I didn't get to pick my coaches. I had no control. I didn't even get to pick travel schedule, things like that. I had no authority whatsoever.
My
I probably
God.
should have done it, but I wanted to be an NFL head coach, and you're always going to take that job. So, yeah, if unless you're like a premium candidate, then that you get to pick and choose like Gruden always got to do, or maybe a Harbaugh thinks he gets to do, which is why weird. Stephen Ross loves Jim Harbaugh. He wants to be in the NFL. The rumor was he wanted Jim Harbaugh. Why the heck is he not going to the Dolphins? But that's a long way of answering your question. No, I don't think any candidate that has no other options says no to the Dolphins because he thinks they're going to get a different owner. Heck, you take that job hoping you get a legitimate owner, to be honest with you.
Right. All right, Dan. Sorry about the tech problems. We'll talk next week. I appreciate you doing it. Thanks for going solo a couple times, and to the listeners, appreciate you watching tonight. Thank you. See you, Dan.
See ya.